$425 million for Ukraine. That's right. Apparently, we don't have enough money to help those within the region of Appalachia or the panhandle of Florida. And why might that be? Because apparently FEMA doesn't have the money. They do not have the disaster relief aid that will be able to make sure that they have the funds to reach the end of hurricane season. But apparently, we've got all the money in the world to send abroad to all of these different foreign nations to make sure that we're endlessly funding these endless wars. So isn't that just remarkable? American citizens abandoned once again for the pursuits of funding the military-industrial complex. Once again, we see that you, the American citizen, are the last thing that is on the mind of those within the American government. Now let's go ahead, jump in, and see what we've going on with the next phase of insanity surrounding the war in Ukraine. Jumping in now with good old Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State for the United States of America. Today, I'm announcing the delivery of $425 million of support for Ukraine's defense. The United States and more than 50 nations stand united with Ukraine, and this support will ensure the continued robust support in the months ahead. Yeah, that's right. Once again, we can see that American citizens are being completely abandoned, whether it be in the pursuit of funding a war on the other side of the world, or whether it be in the pursuit of taking care of illegal immigrants that are flooding into the country and abandoning the citizens that you claim to serve. We can see that people like that of Antony Blinken, they don't serve you. In fact, they despise you, and every single one of their actions should highlight exactly that. Let's go ahead now and see what we have with some responses. Well, here we have from Ian Carroll. Remind us again how much has gone to hurricane survivors in your own country. Fucking traitor. From Clown World. Why? Ukraine doesn't stand a chance of winning this. Haven't too many young men died already? Maybe it's time to end this. But you're a warmonger and an evil man. And yes, that's true. Too many young men have died. And that's why we're now seeing this unfurl in Ukraine. From Newsweek, Ukraine could draft women to the front lines to save Europe, ex-army chief says. That's right. To save Europe, we'll be sacrificing the women who will be creating the next generation of Ukrainians. Are you serious? So you've already sacrificed the current generation of Ukraine, and now what you're going to do is completely destroy the ability for a new one to be created. Isn't that remarkable? Jumping on now to the BBC, we see, it's scary, but so's giving birth. The female unit gunning down Russian drones. That's right. This is not a joke. They've already been in combat for some time because there were women who were already volunteering to go into the armed forces in Ukraine. And they've been doing this since the beginning of the war. And you give credit where credit's due. But the thing is, even amongst all of the travesty and devastation of war, in many ways, you still can't stop women from being women, and I'll highlight exactly what I mean in just a second with this article, because here we see, weary but determined, women join Ukraine's fight against Russia in historic numbers. 2 female soldiers told NBC News that, like their male comrades, they were exhausted as the war approached the 2-year mark, but unlike the men, the women said they were facing another challenge: sexism. You know, I would think the calamity and devastation of all-out conflict, your country being invaded, your fellow soldiers being slaughtered, would really outpace the depth and weight that sexism would hold in your society. But who knows, maybe I'm just wrong and I don't know what I'm talking about. But when I saw this, I was just mind blown, because you know, on the ground, the women who are fighting, they're not as concerned about something like sexism. What they're concerned about is surviving. But of course, we see MSNBC once again being nothing more than a felonious progressive propaganda outlet that is pushing out nothing more than nonsense into the ether, highlighting that you see another challenge faced by women in combat. It's not just that they might die, but the fact is that they're being treated with the degree of sexism. Are you fucking serious right now? Just another perfect example of exactly why I do not respect nor trust the corporate press. Now let's go ahead and move on and see what we've got with, apparently, now we see new troops being shipped over to assist Russia in this conflict, and Well, sadly, it appears once again we see another country being enroped into this battle, and that will only bring us to the possibility of a wider war breaking out, as we see with what's going on with Ukraine and Russia. We see what's going on with the Middle East now, not only with Israel and Gaza, but now Israel, Lebanon, and now striking Syria, and as well as Iran. This is breaking out into a much wider war. And oh, wait, let's not forget what's going on with the possibility of China and Taiwan. We truly live in tumultuous times, and we are walking through history, and many of the times when you are doing so, you do not realize it until you come to the cusp of the moment itself. Alrighty, now let's go ahead and move on and talk about those troops that are being sent abroad that could very well highlight the fact that we are escalating to a wider war that very well could be seen in the future by the next generation as World War III itself. Here we see from CBS News. North Korea said to be sending thousands of troops to help Russia in the Ukraine war. Yeah, that's right. And where could this information be coming from? Well, it's South Korean intelligence. South Korean intelligence has apparently found that North Korea has dispatched 12,000 troops, including special operations forces, to support Russia's war against Ukraine. News have reported this on Friday, with a development saying that it could bring a third country into the war and intensify a standoff between North Korea and the West. Oh wow, would you look at that? The Russians being involved in another stalemate that has to do with the Koreans and the West? Truly, we've never seen anything like this before. Anyways, moving on. Now we jump on to USA Today, and here we see. That war is a loser, Donald Trump says, blames Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelenskyy for Russia's invasion. And Trump, once again, being the brash character that he is, completely removed from the totality of what actually allows for something like this to happen. But the thing is, what he's specifically referencing here is that this war could have actually been brought to a close quite soon, and it didn't have to happen, because this could have been something that was avoided entirely had Zelenskyy not gone along with the machinations of the West operating as their puppet when it came to the fact of him being, well, effectively nothing more than the mouthpiece for the UN, NATO, and the United States liberal world empire itself after the ousting of Yanukovych in 2014. With that of the Maidan coup, but that's a conversation that we have had so many times on this channel, and I have read so much about it over the years, and so many people have heard me repeat many different things about it on repeat, so I will not be doing so in this video. But the fact is, Donald Trump once again failing to actually have the nuance to truly convey the point that he wants to, with the brevity and gravitas that he so desires to actually sell people on the merits of his ideas. But alas, that shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. Donald Trump is very much a brash bull in a china shop. So now let's go ahead and jump in and see what we have from this article from USA Today, and then we'll go ahead and close this out. Former President Donald Trump, long sympathetic towards Russian President Vladimir Putin, cast blame Thursday on Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelenskyy for Russian invasion of Ukraine that was authorized by Putin. Criticizing Zelensky's request for U.S. aid to Ukraine, Trump told a podcast released Thursday, "I feel very badly for those people, but he never should have let that war start. That war is a loser." Trump, as he often does, also blamed President Joe Biden for the war in Ukraine, saying that the American president instigated the war by Putin and Russia. Supporters of Ukraine have predicted that aid to Ukraine will end if Trump reclaims the presidency, although he has said he plans to forge a settlement between Russia and Ukraine. This should have been settled before it started, Trump said on the PBD podcast posted Thursday. Okay, let's go ahead and tackle the way that they frame this for but a moment, and I wasn't going to actually break this down. I was just going to read through this article, but it ended up bugging me so much that I felt it was necessary to do so, because it's quite clear the way in which USA Today is trying to frame this and how they're trying to condition your analysis of this situation. So let's go ahead and expose that. Here you can see it starts off by saying, former President Donald Trump, long sympathetic to Russian President Vladimir Putin. So what they're trying to do there is invoke the mindset of 2016 with that of the Russiagate hoax. Don't you remember when Russia invaded our elections in 2016 and stole our sacred democracy and put Donald Trump in power? Because that was the narrative that the media was running with for quite literally 4 years straight. Didn't matter how many of the investigations they put forward didn't pan out, and how much of the times that when people would actually do independent investigations into those people investigating Donald Trump, it would expose the fact that these people are nefarious actors trying to pin him down in something that he didn't do. That was irrelevant, and the media didn't tackle that. We'll sidestep that and just continue to lambaste Donald Trump. And I say this as someone who is an ardent critic of Donald Trump. I just understand that the media is absolutely retarded and the way in which they critique him is completely off the rails ridiculous. So, moving on a little further down, we then see that they talk about how Donald Trump also, as he often does, blamed Joe Biden for the war in Ukraine. And he certainly kept it going, but also what you could do is extrapolate outwards and take this back in time to the Obama administration when Joe Biden was what? The point man on Ukraine when he was assisting, I don't know, Victoria Nuland and Jeffrey Pyatt in ousting the current government in 2014 during the Maidan coup so they could get rid of Yanukovych and in turn eventually put Yatsenyuk in power and then in time have an election which Zelenskyy would then be elected with a vast margin of the vote. But what is it that Zelenskyy ran on? Being a peacetime candidate. So that is the thing that got him into positions of power, and then as we can see, it's certainly the thing that he is not doing is being a peacetime candidate, because Zelenskyy has not been operating as the man who has been trying to make sure that a deal is met with Russia. He is sacrificing Ukrainians on the battlefield of war on repeat. It does not matter how many young men are ground into the dirt and the avatar of Ukrainian youth is completely cast into the dustbin of history. No, because you see, we have to defeat Russia, and anyone who believed that Ukraine could defeat Russia in this conflict, or that the West had the ability to capsize Russia, as we were sold from the beginning, well, I'd argue that you simply aren't familiar with how Russians handle conflict, because they will throw endless amounts of bodies at this problem until it is solved as they see fit. So what we see is only creating a truly despotic and disgusting meat grinder of war, which Vladimir Putin is most certainly a war criminal. Do not take this as a defense of him nor the Russian government, but by all means, you should realize what this represents and the possibility of breaking out into a wider war and why that could possibly happen when we look back in correlations of how things like this have happened in history with Russia specifically. So, now let's go ahead and jump back into this article and see what else USA Today has for us. Trump has blamed Zelenskyy for the Russian invasion launched in February of 2022 before telling supporters in North Carolina earlier this month that we continue to give billions of dollars to a man who refuses to make a deal. In the Thursday podcast, Trump again mocked Zelenskyy as one of the greatest salesmen I've ever seen, citing his ability to get aid from the U.S. He then uttered the line, "And that doesn't mean I don't want to help him because I feel very badly for those people, but he should have never let that war start." Trump and Zelenskyy had met late last month. Speaking with reporters, Zelenskyy, who has questioned whether Trump understands what Ukraine is up against, told the Republicans' 2024 presidential nominee he hopes to have more good relations in the future. Trump responded with that it takes two to tango. On Wednesday, the Biden administration announced a $425 million package for Ukraine. A government report says as of June 30th, 2024, since February 2022, the U.S. Congress has appropriated more than $174.2 billion in supplemental funding for the U.S. response to Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. $174 billion. Billion with a B. This is unreal. We are $35 trillion in debt. And if you've heard me talk about the debt, you're about to hear my spiel once again. That doesn't even count if you include the public sector union payouts, the unfunded liabilities, and the fact that it costs, at a minimum, at the current rate of our debt, $1 trillion a year to service it, with us adding $100 billion a month to the debt currently. So apparently it's just fine that we're sending $170 billion abroad, and that's just for one conflict. That doesn't include what's going on with Israel. It doesn't include our funding with Taiwan. It doesn't include the funding that we've just sent to Lebanon, considering that we've just seen Israel dropping bombs upon Lebanon in an attempt to go after who? Hezbollah, which is quite fascinating considering the fact that not only are we, the United States, giving Israel the weaponry that gives them the ability to assault Lebanon, but also the aid to be given to the Lebanese people. Once again, funding both sides of a war. Truly not a shocker. But the thing that is a shocker to me was seeing what's unfurled most recently with an announcement from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy from Ukraine. Here we see from antiwar.com, Zelenskyy says he needs NATO membership or nuclear weapons. The Ukrainian leader said he made the argument in a recent conversation with former President Donald Trump. Okay. So, I may do a history video soon on what happened with Ukraine's nuclear weapons, because I will admit they did get the raw end of the deal in that, and they were supposed to be protected by the West, so it's understandable why that would be a major demand and something that they would desire. But here's the thing. With the callous actions of what we've seen come out of Ukraine, with a missile landing in Poland, as well as striking deep within the heart of Russia, numerous times, far beyond that of the battlefield itself, what we see is this degree of action very well should be something that is a major highlight to why we should not be giving Ukraine nuclear weapons if they will be operating so callously as to send these armaments into NATO countries and then accuse Russia of doing so once they're discovered. That is what we've already seen happen. So do you really want to see something like a country such as this having nuclear weapons if they're already doing this with armaments and then trying to accuse Russia of attacking outside the borders of the conflict zone itself? I know I don't, but alas, this is a tumultuous situation with a very, very deep and long, I would argue, sad and fucked up history that has led to the point of seeing so many people sacrificed in Ukraine. Because for anyone that's unaware, what's been going on within this region for quite some time is nothing more than utter disaster, and you can take this back to the Holodomor with the slaughtering of Ukrainians, which was effectively nothing more than a genocide, but people don't talk about that Holocaust. They only talk about one of them. And with that understanding of the fact that the Ukrainian people did face a genocide at the hands of the Soviet Union and the Russians through the fact of starvation to the tune of 4 million people, it's completely understandable why they would be so averse to Russian control of their territory. Through all of my critiques of Western support of this war, it is never through the attempt to malign the Ukrainian people, because I understand that what they are fighting is, in their eyes, the greatest aggressor that they have ever known. And because of this, we have to take in a realization of what a fight like this would mean to the people on the ground in Ukraine, who had that contextual basis of understanding the weight of history. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and call it there. Thank you for watching. If you got this far, thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. Tell me where I'm wrong in the comment section down below. Please pray for the people of Ukraine. They most certainly deserve it. Stay lovely, stay great. Tell someone you love them, my friends, because, my goodness, they'd love to hear it. You'd feel better having said it, and the world is a better place with your love being out there to be conveyed to it. Thank you for watching. Peace out.